Good afternoon. Welcome to day 2 of FrOSCon 20. This is room number 3, in case you're wondering. The talk after the lunch break that we are going to hear now is Delegate authentication and a lot more to Keycloak with OpenID Connect. Please give a very warm round of applause. Alexander Schwartz.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was a very, very warm welcome. Welcome to my talk here at FOSDEM. Glad to be here. Glad to have you all in the audience. I hear it's going to be live streamed, but only the people in the audience can ask questions. So if some question comes to your mind, do the people online or watching the recording a favor, ask that question. We have about an hour, so this hour can be very interactive. When you will join me on this one, making it interactive. So I'm taking questions during the talk, and then we can digress, well, until we have time.
If you want to ask a question, make yourself visible, and I will bring the microphone to you, so we have the question on the recording. Or you repeat it.
I repeat it then. Yeah, that's probably the plan, right? Okay. Delegating authentication and a lot more to Keycloak with OpenID Connect. I'm Alexander Schwartz, or just Alex. I'm one of the Keycloak maintainers. There's almost a dozen maintainers working on Keycloak and a lot more contributing, of course. All right, so what's the motivation of the talk? That's the agenda for the next, well, let's see, maybe 45 minutes. Practical authentication by example, and then all the other things you will also need when you starting your journey into identity management, authentication, and finally, the summary, standards everywhere that help us to get all this done here. Right. Okay. A second ago it was working. Now it's not. Anyway, authentication, well, it's the answer to the question, who are you? An application is out there. A user comes by and the application wants to know who is that person who wants to get access to data. Actually, but it starts a lot earlier than that. It starts with, is that user that comes around here already logged in? And then I might want to show a different screen, a starting screen, and different information. And I not always want to, I don't know, surprise the user with a login screen. Then there's been this authentication flow diagram. Who has seen that auth flow, OpenID Connect flow diagram in the past? Some in the room? Yeah, but how do I put that to life? How it's actually working? This diagram does not tell you much. Also, when you read the standard, it's lots of dry letters on a piece of paper. And well, we put that to life today, and also we want to look in how to benefit of the features of Keycloak and spending minimal amount of work around managing your users, managing their credentials, and getting all that other stuff done that you will also need to do when you're, well, having users, having web applications usually. And well, some of those we will cover today is about, are you already logged in? I want to register as a new user. I forgot my password. I want to change my password. I want to manage the account. Am I still logged in? Well, that's more a question that the application is asking then. I re-authenticate, I enforce a second factor. All of that, incremental profiling, all of that Keycloak can do for you. The good news is you can do that incrementally. You don't have to do that from the start, from the very beginning. But I'd say sooner or later you will come across all these questions when you're running an application, running it for internal users, running it for external users. Yeah, so that's why Keycloak has all that built in. Let's look at some practical authentication by example. So the actors in display is an end user. They have credentials, and their key skill is they operate a web browser. So this is mostly about web applications, not so much about logging into an operating system. There's obviously Keycloak. It has been in the title, so it's also part of the play. It's an OpenID provider, or OP as an acronym, also known as an identity provider. It can show a login screen. It can also validate these credentials when you put into a login screen, and eventually it will issue tokens after the login process is complete, and this Tokens then contain information the application is interested in. It can also validate tokens. So an application has the choice to maybe check some cryptographic signatures on those tokens, or it can send them to Keycloak to validate them. And I also brought a very small view application here. That's then the relying party, or the client application as we call it. It shows a web app. It interacts with the OpenID Connect provider and with other relying parties. And eventually it wants the user to authenticate. But again, as I said earlier, the first question it has is that user already logged in? And then it wants to make the decision, or maybe even leave the decision to the user to say, yes, now I want to log in, now I want to register, or maybe I want to use this application as an anonymous user. And well, Keycloak, it's an open source identity and access management solution. The initial commit was in 2013. It's part of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. It's an incubating project since 2023. Well, it's good that we're with the CNCF. It's a lot of paperwork as well to get in there. Anyway, it's an Apache 2 license, which is, I'd say, commercially friendly and not very restrictive here. It's also that 100% of Keycloak is open source, so there's nothing like an open core or something that is only available after a subscription. It's really 100% open source. And there's also a community that provides extensions that you can add. You can also write your own extensions. Maybe take some of these public extensions as an example. Yeah, and it has about 29,000 GitHub stars as of today. If you're interested in learning more about Keycloak, there's a Keycloak conference, or KeyConf, coming up on the 28th of August, like later this month. So join us there in Amsterdam. It's a beautiful city, and you're going to meet a lot of people interested in Keycloak there. So yeah, let's start a bit into OpenID Connect. So the first half is about, well, this real pure OpenID Connect. It will work with any OpenID Connect provider. So there's something called a well-known endpoint, and each of these OpenID providers, it has an issuer URL, and what you then call this one well-known endpoint. And it then returns, well, a JSON. A lot of services return JSON today. And it returns the issuer. It returns then something like an authorization endpoint, something that we will use a lot later in this talk. URLs about the token endpoint, where Keycloak can introspect and validate a token. The introspect endpoint, of course. The token endpoint, where I can do token refreshes. The user info endpoint, where I can find out more about the user, where I can log out. And also eventually a lot of more information about the capabilities of an OpenID provider. So when you're using OpenID Connect in your company, maybe Keycloak, maybe a different other provider, you can, well, look up this OpenID configuration endpoint, and you can figure out what this provider is actually capable to do. All the features that are there, what is enabled, what is disabled. And this is actually dynamic. So when you go to the UI of Keycloak, or the admin UI, and enable features and disable features, the JSON here will change. And your application can react to that. And the good news is also, when you have, maybe a Rust application, maybe a React application, maybe a Java application, you go there and use a library that provides OpenID Connect to you, and you configure usually only the issuer URL, and from the issuer URL, this application will discover all the other things and bits that are there, and how to interact. And the first question I would like to start with, as already mentioned, is a user already logged in? And how do you do that with OpenID Connect? It's, well, like most things, it's just a GET or maybe a POST request away. And you take this authorization endpoint that was there in this JSON, and you add something to the end. In this case here, you add a redirect URI, where you're forwarding now to Keycloak, and then at some point you want to get a response back. This redirect URI is then where you get this response back. And you add a prompt equals none here. So basically translating to human words, don't show anything to the user. Just come back to me and let me know, is that user logged in or not logged in, and yeah, what's next? And if the user is not logged in, I get an error back on this redirect URI I passed in earlier here, and it tells me login required. So in other words, I now know the user is not logged in yet, which is great, because then I can show a landing page, offer the user to a choice of should it now register that person, should it now log in when they know they have a login already. Yeah, or maybe use this service fully anonymously, not logged in. So that's the first bit of OpenID Connect. And we can, let's look at this, how this really looks as a live example. So I have here my app. So let's do a refresh here. And what this application does, I return this very start page. What it's then doing, it's fetching the OpenID Connect configuration from the well-known endpoint, and then it redirects to Keycloak. Let's zoom in a bit. So what I see here at some point is the redirect URI, where I want to get back to, also the client ID and some other part of the OpenID Connect protocol. And then Keycloak immediately returns back to the application, as we've seen earlier, with an issue, and again this error message, login is required. All right, so far so hopefully expected. Questions about this? Yeah, we can make this interactive, but only when we work together. Okay, so let's say I'm not yet registered, and I can clear my network console here, and I say register. What happens then? I have basically the same URL here, and what comes here is at some point, prompt create. So earlier there was a prompt none, and the OpenID Connect standard at some point in one of its many documents specifies prompt create should give a registration screen. So what I can do here, I can register as a user. No password. So I'm now registered. Oh, it was not a good password. Please change it. Okay, I will do. I promise. And what you see here, this is, I registered and I'm already logged in. So sometimes you have this user experience where you register somewhere and then it tells you, you're registered. Now please enter your password. Maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe I have confirmed my email address and whatnot, but actually I don't want to do that as a user. And with Keycloak, well, you can choose, or actually the default is that you don't need to log in after you registered. So yeah, so I registered now. I'm also logged in. We can again have, I didn't show the server info. So this is the full server info I showed earlier, which actually, when I scroll down, shows all the prompt values that are supported with Keycloak. Basically, when you go to the realm at some point and disable the user registration, so, this is the admin UI of Keycloak, I can go to the realm settings and say user registration off. So at the moment it tells me prompt value supported is then including the create. Yes, I can register. And then I now disabled this toggle switch, and now it tells me, okay, registration is not supported. So as I said, this is very dynamic. So I'm logged in because I registered. I can log out. And then again, I will call a different one of these URLs in the well-known endpoint. I'm now no longer logged in. And when I then log in as a user, that was this user Alex with a very secure password. Thank you for reminding me. And then we will have, I wanted to show this other prompt, and then this prompt login that will tell me, probably here somewhere, that I really want now the user to show its the password and whatever else. When a user is logged in, a user can have open multiple tabs in the browser, and you're logged in all of them, right? So that's part of the single sign-on experience. And what you can then do, you can, as an application, open a small iframe that is here. It can be hidden, but I chose not to hide it. And what happens there, you can open a specific URL again, an iframe. Iframes are from the Stone Age of the web. They kind of survived. So this small dinosaur allows us to communicate between the application and Keycloak and make sure that the user is still logged in that browser. And what would happen is, if the user logs out in any of the other tabs of that same browser, the cookie will be gone, and then this small interaction here will tell the application shortly after, okay, this user is not logged in anymore. Please do whatever you think is necessary as to do next. For example, very common thing would be to return to the start page, where the user can then choose either to continue not authenticated or to re-log in. Iframes work especially well when you're on the same domain, but let's see how long the security guys around browsers allow us to use iframes here. So maybe eventually this functionality will be blocked by the browser vendors, but as long as it's there, it's working quite nicely to figure out if somebody is still logged in. Right. Yeah, okay. Interaction, yeah, good. Ask your question, please.
What about the type or the implementation of the actual authentication? So is there a username password pair built in, or can that be plugged out as well? So if I don't want passwords but require a PKC 11 smart card whatsoever.
Okay, so yeah, the login screen that has been presented there is then not part of OpenID Connect, and every provider can provide its own method of authentication, as you just suggested, right? So what Keycloak supports is, as you've seen, username password. It also supports second factors. If you want to do MFAs, time-based OTPs, you can add WebAuthn as a second factor or as a first factor, including passkeys, which will be fully supported in release 26.4, which will be available as usually, I would say, end of September. If you want to do smart cards, I think what you would then usually do would be MTLS. So you might have a TLS client certificate on a smart card that you would unlock locally, and you could use those to log in there. That would be possible. What you can also do is, if you're in an enterprise context, you might be running on Linux or Windows machines that use Kerberos. So you log in there, and then whenever there would be a login screen of Keycloak, there would be no login screen because it would directly use Kerberos, basically exchanging the Kerberos token to an OpenID Connect token or a SAML token, whatever the application asked for. So, what did I forget? Yeah, you could also do federation to forwarding to another OpenID Connect or SAML provider. You could also direct this to an Active Directory or any LDAP to do the password authentication against LDAP. So it's a toolbox to pick the tools from. I hope there was something in there that you liked. Yeah, if you have anything missing in there in the toolbox, we have also our project stand here. So come around and pick up a sticker and get into touch with other things you might want there. How about filing feature requests on GitHub? You can always open a ticket. So the thing is, then you would probably want to ask your friends to upvote your issue. That's also a good practice to get your things visible to the maintainers. You can also talk to us, of course. Very good practice is also to maybe look first if there's somebody else requesting something like this and help him or her to vote this one up.
And
so, yes.
Preferably provide a reference in implementation already with the feature request.
Yeah, so about Keycloak, Keycloak is Java-based. Not everybody is a Java developer. Still, if it's part of an open standard and RFC, it's always nice. Then we have something to implement against. If it's just a feature, just a feature, that sounds not so nice. If it's something you just need in an enterprisey, open source, home lab, whatever environment, then it would be nice. You can describe more of the scenario, how you want to use it, where you want to use it, so people can chime in and say, yes, it will work for me as well in this environment, but it should consider that situation as well. So that would help us, because like if we're not implementing a standard, we need to have more context. That's maybe the answer I was looking for 2 minutes ago. Okay. Right. Good question. Thank you very much. More questions? Or maybe later? Okay, good. Yeah, registration, we saw that with this prompt create. And this was then part of, this registration is an OIDC standard, or part of this, bunch of flowers of standards in OpenID Connect. And we added that in Keycloak 26.1. And, login was there all the time anyway. And what you then receive there is the redirect with the session state and the code. And basically, once the session state has changed, you know that a new login has happened. And you then get this code, you post this and some other parameters to Keycloak again, and then you receive this real OpenID Connect access ID token telling you who the user is, access token which you can use to access other services, and a refresh token that you can use to refresh the access token, because the access token is usually valid for maybe only a minute or 30 seconds, or depending on security requirements, maybe, some people do it very long, but maybe 5 minutes would be the upper limit I would personally choose. Yeah, this iframe, again, as mentioned earlier, works with this session state. You send the session state to this by using JavaScript to that iframe, and it basically returns session state is still the same, still logged in as before, or it returns, the session state has changed. So then you know, okay, they logged in or relogged in or whatever, I know should get a new token from Keycloak, or they're probably logged out. Refreshing, that's again where the refresh token endpoint comes in, and you get then a new set of tokens. Right, and you get some information about the user. Usually these access tokens are sent to REST resources as bureau tokens. So you have an HTTP header called authorization : blank, bureau blank, then the access token. And then you get some response as JSON from the server. I didn't show that, so let's do that. So the user info, let's see, this is the REST endpoint that's being called. So where's the header? Request headers are down there. Access tokens are long, are JSON web tokens when it comes to Keycloak. So JSON web tokens, there's some JSON in there, but there's also a signature in there and the key ID. And you can decode that in your application when you have the proper OpenID Connect library. I don't recommend you do it manually because it's security stuff. It should be done right. So please use an OpenID Connect library that helps you with that. Otherwise you might miss a bit here. And then this user endpoint provides some information about the user and the email, if it's maybe verified or not. So I just registered, I didn't verify my email address yet. So this is all there. Right. And if I log out, I call a user session. At the end session endpoint, I have something that's changed, recently, or that wasn't there in the beginning of OpenID Connect, that you put your ID token in here, in this URL. The idea being, I could trick a user to click on some link and then make them log out. And then the user will be annoyed and then need to relog in again. So I need to put some kind of proof in there to make sure that an application where the user previously logged in is actually triggering the logout here. So that's why you now need to put in the ID token hint in here. If you don't do that, the user will first get a confirmation screen of, do you really want to log out? But if you put this ID token hint in here, you will not get that confirmation, and you're just going to be logged out. And once that redirect is complete, the logout is complete, the redirect will happen to the post-logout redirect URI. All these URLs, they are registered for specific client ID, so you can't pick just any, you can't, in a properly configured Keycloak, you can't pick just any URL for test purposes. Some people put in wildcard URLs in the client configurations. Yes, if you do that, you're going to be insecure. You're basically going to be an open redirect. You don't want that. So you have a hopefully very restricted URL configuration in here, which for each client, which URIs you want to allow there and which not. Yeah, so up to here, everything was, I'd say, pure OpenID Connect. It would work with Keycloak and any other provider. And now we can start with the second half, right? Any questions about OpenID Connect so far? Good.
Not OpenID Connect, but about this SLO thing you just described, the single logout.
Yeah.
This looked very much like OpenID Connect. Does Keycloak also support XAML SLO?
We support XAML, and I believe we also support XAML logout. There are there are different kinds of logouts. There are front channel and back channel logouts. Yes. There is one variant where you do front channel logout with XAML that we don't support, and when there are some brokers involved. So the thing is, when you do, let's assume that you are doing brokerage with Keycloak. All your applications connect with Keycloak. Keycloak connects then to other IDPs, and you want to do a logout from the application to Keycloak, and Keycloak should log out the user at the IDP. And at some point, if it's all being front channel logout and you want to log out all these, you open some iframes. It's messy, unfortunately. I then really recommend to do back channel logout, which works more reliably.
Or switch from XAML to OpenID Connect.
Which is not always possible, yes. At the same time, we say we support both. If there's something missing, please let us know or help us implementing it. So the good thing with Keycloak is that we support both worlds, both XAML and OpenID Connect, to a great extent. There's always some new standard coming up or some feature that we don't, that might be not so frequently asked for, but we don't support yet. But we're working on that, and with the help of the community, we're getting there. All right, let's dive into the other part of the talk, like all the other things you will also need when you do authentication and user management. So something is you can enforce a second factor authentication. Well, we have a guide for that. Actually, something I will not demo today. So the slides are already uploaded, and the thing is you can really configure the authentication flows in Keycloak to great detail, which is a blessing and a curse, as usual, when you configure things to a great extent. And the thing is, an application, sometimes you can say, or in some environments you can say, when I log in, I always want to have this second factor being asked for. But with Keycloak, you can get, and OpenID Connect as well, you can say you have an authentication flow which is configured that an application can decide when it wants to have the second factor. For that, you can have a URL. Again, this authorization endpoint, you put in ACR values to authentication level. You can imagine it like this. And then the login continues, and then with ACR value 2, it will ask for the second factor only then, but only when it's not provided, it will not ask for that. In Keycloak 26.1, you can you can also configure that for some applications you need a second factor, and for some other applications you don't need a second factor. For example, an application where I can change my bank account to get my money sent to every month from my employer, maybe there a second factor would be nice, otherwise somebody might direct money to somebody else. Otherwise, with all the other applications where I just can change my telephone number, maybe then I don't need a second factor. Again, with this second factor configurations, you can make things like the second factor is being asked for, and then it will not be asked for that many seconds. And when the second factor is asked for again after an hour, then okay, the second factor pops up again. So that's possible to configure. Again, it's a very, very powerful thing. Of course, you can shoot yourself in the foot with very powerful things as well. Good. Security best practice. So here you're passing on values using an URL to Keycloak, and basically it's an URL. Everybody can change it. So you should like the information that you pass to Keycloak. Everybody can put a 1 in there and then be redirected eventually back to your application. So what you should really do if you're relying on this ACR value that the second factor has been probably processed, then you should really check when a user is coming back in the ID tokens that Keycloak put in there the value ACR that you actually expected to be there, and when it's there, you can really trust that value. Well, once you get it back from Keycloak, you can trust it has been done correctly. But sending this message to Keycloak as part of the URL, you can't trust that to be relayed to Keycloak, especially when you're using a single-page application that is controlling the browser. Does it make sense? I hope. Maybe some nodding would help me. Okay, thank you. All right. Something that comes with Keycloak is a fully fledged account console. So where a user I can show that live. Again, it's just a redirect away. So I can go to the account console. Then this network tab is not so very interesting. I can update my information. Well, actually here is not allowed to update my username or email address directly, but I can first name, last name. I can see where I can change my password. I can add my second factor here. I can see device activities. Where am I logged in? I can see the applications that I used in the past. So all this is available as the account console. Again, it's just a redirect away, and I can also then redirect from the account console back to the application. Again, this URL is being used. Again, this referrer URI is again checked against the wildcards or the URI pattern that are configured for this client. But then a fully fledged account console is maybe not that what I want. Maybe it's just too much. Maybe I need only some functionality in there. And the good news is, well, this is now an extension of Keycloak, and again, this authorization endpoint that we saw earlier, with case, I can add another query parameter to it with Casey_action to trigger different parts of the account console in a modular fashion. So, for example, here I can trigger an action to update the profile of the user. So the user can click on a link in my application and comes back to Keycloak and can change their first name, last name, or whatever fields I want them to be allowed to be changed. There are a lot of other things, for example, updating the password or deleting the account, configure TOTP, WebAuthn password. So all these are called application-initiated actions in Keycloak, and they offer you a very modular access to the account console. And as it's, again, I call a URL from my application, that makes it hopefully very modular and integratable. Also, when it comes to theming, the thing that people usually theme first would be the login theme of Keycloak. Theming the account console, being a JavaScript application, is a bit more, well, a bit more work, to say it in polite. And So the good news is all these application-initiated actions are part of the login theme. So when you're done with the login theme, you can actually use all of these application-initiated actions in a modular fashion. Right. And then you don't need to worry so much about theming the account console. So something that we added in Keycloak 26.4, there's also now the verify email application initiated action. Previously, there was only like the required action, so that when a user, well, that maybe, who knows Keycloak and application initiated actions and required actions? Anybody? Oh, okay, I should explain it. So a required action is something that I, well, put a flag on a user. When they log in the next time, they should, for example, verify their email address, add a TOTP, verify that all their profile information is there. So that's a required action I put on a user. But almost the same functionality is available also as an application-initiated action. This is something I can trigger at any time from an application by calling a specific URL. And verify email was there a long time already, but only as a required action. And since Keycloak 26.2, it's also now there as an application-initiated action. So as an example, I'm now logged in as this user Alex, who logged in earlier. And when I look at the user, it has a user email address, and the email verified flag is false. And email verified is, well, I would say a standard OpenID Connect claim in here. And what I can do, I can now click on verify email, again with this prompt, trigger that action. It now notices, okay, I authenticated, I think about the default is 30 seconds ago, so I'm now forced to re-authenticate. And I can send out an email verification. I get an email. Now here, MailDev is an email server mock that shows me this email that I sent out from Keycloak. I click here and my email is now verified. So the email verified is now true. Keycloak confirmed to the application that the user has done that. So with this application-initiated action, an application can really decide when is the right time to validate the email. Maybe I don't want to do it all the time. Maybe I don't need it all the time. Maybe I just do it in the very last moment to avoid losing people in my funnel, in my, well, marketing stuff. Yeah. So that's, I think, a nice way on showing how this application-initiated actions can be triggered. I can also do scopes to acquire additional data. Something that I can add, for example, a scope to my authorization endpoint again. For example, the scope address, when I want to know about the address of the user, and I can then configure different fields with that. So that's something we call then eventually incremental profiling. So what we have here in Keycloak is basically a full form builder. So here are all the regular fields of a user, like username, email, first name, last name. And I can create a new attribute. Let's call it address. I can group them. I can do whatever you usually do with form editors. I can say this should only be enabled when I require this OpenID Connect scope address. It's then also a required field for both users and admins when this specific scope of address is then requested. It's editable by the user and the admin, and both can also view it. I can add validations to that, so that's all fine. Oh, let's call it formatted. That's the formatted address. That's the attribute, right? Okay, and if I have done everything correctly, and I go back to the application, an application can then request this extra scope address, and now it shows the user profile again and will tell me, okay, now address is required, and I put in my address. I submitted the information, and now this address is then called in the formatted address. That's my address that I just entered. So it's part of the user information, it's part of the ID token. Well, I can configure actually where I want to see it. And if I then log out and eventually request this address scope, then again, let's log out, logging in, Alex. Yes, it's still an unsecure password. And if I then, where's the address scope? Yeah, now nothing happened, almost. But there's the address. I wasn't asked for the address because the address is there. It was a required field. The information is already there. The only thing that happened, I redirected to Keycloak with the scope, came back, and I'm fine. So this is how these scopes work and how this incremental profiling of users can work. So an application requests information when it needs it, and only then this information becomes required to enter for the user, is then put into Keycloak, stored in the user database, and it's available for all the future upcoming calls. Yeah.
Very loud. So does this additive profiling also work with any backend or only with the Keycloak? So you can have an LDAP server as Keycloak backend, and will Keycloak then create a new LDAP attribute for the LDAP server? I suppose not. So this will only, and that's my question, this will only work with a database backend of Keycloak. Is this?
It will work with LDAP very fine. So the thing is, this form editor you saw there for all the attributes. So if you choose to store things in the Keycloak database, it's in the Keycloak database, right? If you connect Keycloak to an LDAP, you can actually configure the existing LDAP attributes that are there and map them and make sure that maybe some of these attributes are hidden, some of them are available only to admins and some available for users, and then read only or not. So that's possible with LDAP. Or, well, we won't add the new field to the LDAP schema. That's something you have to do. but then once that field is in the LDAP schema, you can really use it and fill it with that and do the thing. So I think an LDAP admin would be very upset if we configure the LDAP schema for the LDAP admin. But we will store the information there. And again, something that I missed earlier, so we have this password reset flow. You can even use Keycloak to connect it to LDAP, and then if somebody is locked or forgot their password in LDAP, that you can use Keycloak to reset the password in LDAP for that user. Well, if anybody ever come across that problem, maybe now you have one more solution to that. Right. Restricting user authorization on clients. So there's a great extension that you can add to Keycloak that's called restrict client auth. So some of the applications, well, Keycloak is very good in authentication, but then when it comes to OpenID Connect, it leaves the authorization who can access which specific app, usually to the app. So that then the application receives who that user is. But then does he really have or she have really the permission to access the application? And with this extension, you can configure that in the authentication flows in Keycloak. So if then a user tries to access an application that they're not allowed to do access, Keycloak will show the error message and will never forward the user to the application. So that's a very nice extension. There are a lot of more extensions on our homepage, so you might give them a try them out, or take it as an inspiration of adding your own extensions to Keycloak. Right, so I think we're now 45 minutes into the talk. Stan is everywhere. What we've seen is, well, Keycloak, it has a lot of authentication and user management functionality. A lot of that can be used by, well, putting a redirect in your existing application. It might trigger then some original OpenID Connect functionality, or eventually also SAML if you're a fan of SAML. And there are also some extension that we saw, that this application-initiated actions, they still use the same OpenID Connect URLs. I would hope that your OpenID Connect library adds the option to add this query parameters still, and doesn't block that from you, so you can use that functionality as well, independent of your programming language and framework that you're using. there is these standards around this prompt, we saw them and you can really leverage them. Again, there's also SAML, but I didn't talk about SAML today. These scopes that we saw, you can use them to incrementally acquire user data. Depending on your setup, you can also ask for user consent in the way we saw it today, there was no consent screen. So there was no screen asking the user, are you sure you want to share your address with that application? This is by default disabled here, but you can enable it. And then have these required fields being asked for. So trying out some of these the features I showed today are all supported. Passkeys will be supported by 26.4, which will be available in September. So if there are any other features that are not fully supported yet, please try them out, give us feedback so they can mature. Our big goal for 2025 is to make more features that are currently preview supported, and we've come a long way already this year. So yeah, that's it, I would say. Some URLs, the slides are already online, also on the plan of FOSDEM. So there's an OpenID Connect library, so that's the standard OpenID Connect core. That covers most of what I've showed today. The demo code is also online, and the JavaScript library I used in this demo is the Panva OpenID client library that did all the heavy lifting for me when it comes to OpenID Connect in the browser. Again, join us on the 28th of August. There's already a great program on. So it's not far away from here, I hear. Thank you very much.
I just checked out the link, and apparently there's a very good speaker speaking at that conference as well. Any questions? Yes.
Actually, I have two questions. The first one is, do we know if anyone is already working on some post-quantum signature schemes for JWTs?
Yeah, it's on our radar. At some point we added the elastic curve things, but it's not quantum safe. Yeah, that's a problem. We're on it, but there's no preview feature in Keycloak yet for the post-quantum stuff.
Okay, so if you need any help, there's actually one professor at this very university working on the RFCs.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And yeah,
please connect with me after the talk, and then we will do.
The booth. Actually, I forgot my second question, so I give up the microphone.
Further questions? Yes.
You said that passkeys are supported in September.
Yes.
But currently, maybe it's always the problem with passkey, WebAuthn, YubiKey. But currently, passkeys already work as a second factor only, but not as like completely passwordless.
So it's a preview feature.
Right.
But the preview feature includes both the passwordless as a primary factor and as a second factor. I think in 26.3 they added the functionality that you have a login form where you can both put in the username and password or directly switch to passkey. So that was one of the last bits that they were missing, and now they are tidying up things and then say, yes, we're done, we're supporting, and we're not about to break your APIs. So for this, they have one in the authentication flow, how to put it in there. They're trying to deprecate one of this old login form, for example. So it's like cleaning up, wrapping up things. So that's what we're currently on. So even if you download, that's a good question that you asked it. Even if you download today 26.3, which has passkeys as a preview feature, you can already try it out and use most of it, I would say.
Further question. Very awesome questions so far. Keep it up. You remembered yours.
I did, actually. So we noticed that, I guess with 26.1, or I'm not sure, but you are now supporting token exchange, so the official standard token exchange, not the previous custom one. Yeah. And since you're supporting the official standard, it's no longer possible to perform token exchange as a public client.
Right.
And I believe it's something about scope narrowing, but if I explicitly want to narrow the scope, is there a chance we can get it back?
Yeah, the thing is, hopefully I remember the discussion correctly. So the thing is, as a public client, you don't authenticate, and that's why we don't do token exchange anymore for public clients, only for confidential clients. And what you can then do, you can do this authentication flow that you saw in there earlier and use that with exactly the scopes that you want, and that should work. Can I do a refresh token and add the scopes there? Well, there is a way, and I think there's one way was then to go to the auth flow again. That would definitely work. Maybe there's a second way that I'm not aware of, but we can have a look at the documentation on this one. Yeah, but it works. Well, otherwise we wouldn't have switched it off. Yeah.
Okay, another question is you showed that you can build your own forms and add additional fields. Can you do that only with text, or can you also, let's for example say, I want to upload an avatar picture for users?
Yeah,
can you do that as well?
Well, we have lots of forms in the, so user profile, let's see, formatted address. I can have, sorry, that's validators. I can have lots of different input types. So there are some, but actually no avatar. So, but yeah, so what you can have a multi-line text field, so people putting there, for example, their SSH keys. So that's been done before. But not putting images in there, probably not. You can't. Yeah, maybe doing an upload would be a nice thing then. Yeah, I take it as a RFE, request for enhancement.
Just show the hash of the key instead of the picture. It's easily recognizable.
Yeah,
no.
So the use case would actually be for printing campus cards and so on. So we need a picture from that.
Yeah, so some people do then Gravatar or similar ways that you can derive a profile picture from an email address. But yeah, maybe uploading an image would be nice too.
Further questions? Stepp.
Yeah, just addition. You could use a base64 image and upload to a text field.
Yeah. It technically will work. From the user experience, it might be not so nice. Yeah, but yeah, definitely.
So I have one issue with Keycloak, and that is that it's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm sorry.
I know that with great power comes great responsibility and all this stuff. Okay, but it's pretty easy to come up with some configuration with surprisingly. With surprises, let's call it like this.
Yeah, sure.
So there's no general answer to this question, but can you give at least some kind of recommendations? Is there some kind of a security guideline or something, some approach that could be followed to better evaluate if I didn't build in some backdoors that I did not intend to build in?
Yeah, so the correct and not so helpful answer is yes. So there is like a guide how to harden Keycloak, which contains some of the information, but it's text-based and you need to read it through and do all the checks yourselves. Some person from Interatech, they built KC Warden. It's basically an automated auditing tool, which you can go through, where you can go through. It will give you a report of all the weaknesses that they might put into configurations, like an open redirect and something like this. Maybe that's an answer. Are we short on time? No, or?
Still got 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to expand on that answer, you can. We have 5 more minutes. So
okay. Yeah, it's
otherwise, we'll just take another question.
Yeah, take one more question and then wrap it up.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe another question is, you said that you as the team of developers develop this and you put features in and stuff like that. How is it financed, and to whom could we give money to build in new features, for example?
Yeah, so I think a lot of developers are still funded by Red Hat and IBM working on it, because originally it was created there and then forwarded to the CNCF. We still need to figure out a good way to handle money. For now, we take only code contributions and not money. So if you have good previous knowledge on how to do finances for open source projects, like maybe Open Collective or so, I would be happy to get some feedback on that.
Yeah. Any last words?
Well, it's great to be here and talk about Keycloak. Thanks for having me, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much, Alex.